Hey guys, it's the Chad, and today I want to talk to you about some of the best looking wheels that GM ever produced, the old 15-inch truck rallies. Well, if you guys own a 1967 to 72 or even a 73 to 87 square body, a good set of these can completely transform the look of your old truck. Well, in my last video, I went through and showed you all the different types of truck rallies GM produced. That way you could go out and snag the right ones for your truck. Well, today I'm going to go through and show you how to take your Craigslist, Marketplace, or even junkyard finds, clean them up, and make them look like new again. Newish. So in today's video, I'm going to go through and show you guys the steps to go through and clean these wheels and then make them look like new again. Now to do that, we'll take two different routes. The first one, which is probably the right way, is we'll sandblast these wheels, use the self-etching primer, paint, polish them all up, and then we'll do the Chad way, or the cheap way, where we might stick a wire brush and knock the big chunks off and spray paint them and put them back on the truck. Maybe you won't know the difference. You probably will. Now before we can start cleaning these wheels, some of the items you'll need is, I like using either Purple Power or some type of mean green degreaser. Spray the wheels, center caps, everything down, let them soak for 5-10 minutes, and I like to follow it up. If you guys can get your hands on a power washer, these work great. It's just an awesome way to go through and be able to get all the crud that's in these grooves, and especially when you flip the backside of the wheels over to get all that tar and grease that's been caked on there for years and years. Now, if you can't get your hands on a power washer, then I'd recommend going to the car wash. Spend the $5. But if that's just not an option, you can grab the garden hose, still pre-treat them, and grab some Dawn dish soap and a scrub brush, and just use a little elbow grease. Before your final rinse, don't forget, we need to go through and pull all the valve stems out and any wheel weights if there are any. That way we can get a good even paint job when we're done. If we sell them as is, that's fine, or if we go through to mount new tires on it, we can put new weights on then. Whee! But we've got everything all washed up. I'm gonna let it sit out here in the dry for a couple hours. Probably not gonna get to anything until tomorrow. Now, if you guys are in a big hurry, you can go through and blow these off with an air compressor or even a leaf blower to speed things up. Well, one of the ways you guys can go out and clean up your old wheels is use some type of sand or media blaster. Well, I don't have one, so I shot down to my cousin's house, and he has this nice industrial one, and he's gonna let us use it today. We'll go through and blast the front and back of the wheel and see how it turns out. I really wanna know if it's worth the extra time and effort to do this versus the old traditional sandpaper or wire wheel. So let's get started. So we've got the first wheel all blasted, and man, did it turn out great. You gotta remember, this is where we started at. If we take a look at the back, the before versus the after, just a huge difference. But the downfall was it took me just shy of an hour to do the face of this wheel, and then about another 40 minutes to do the back. Now, if you have access to a blaster in the time, this may be a great way to go through and restore your wheels. Well, I'm gonna show you the way that I generally clean these wheels up, because a lot of us won't have access to a blaster. But if you have some sandpaper, a power drill, and one of these, metal splinter to the face 2000 wheels, you'll be surprised how well these can clean up. All right, so far we've gone through with some 150 grit sandpaper in the wire wheel and done this half so far, and it's going really good. Now, your main thing is taking this big surface rust off. If you have, chips or deep scratches in the paint, sanding it down to level it out before you go through and prime it and top coat it with paint. Now, it's only taken me about 8 or 10 minutes so far to do this half of the wheel, so it is pretty fast. And truly, I don't know if you guys are gonna see this huge difference by sandblasting the wheel or just using a little elbow grease. Well, you can see the back of this wheel's got quite a bit of rust. Now, I'm not gonna take the time to go through and try to get this down to bare metal or anything. I'm just gonna go through and try to knock off any of the big flakes or chunks with the wire wheel. If I can't get into every inch, I'll go through with a little bit of sandpaper. So I've got her all sanded up and it really turned out great. I mean, not as good as the one that we media blasted, but this is gonna be perfect for what we're gonna use it for. Now there's no more chips or scratches left in here. It's really smooth. Now some folks like to go through and wet sand it from here all the way up to 1,000 grit to get it like glass, but this is great. Now I have about 20 minutes into this one and just shy of 2 hours here. So you have to think, what's your time worth? So last thing we need to do to prep these wheels is go through and clean them one last time. Now you can use an enamel reducer, a thinner, even just rubbing alcohol to clean them off. So you just take a rag and go through and wipe them clean. That way if there's any grease, grime, or even our fingerprints on here, we get that cleaned off so we have good adhesion. So we'll keep doing this until your rag is clean. So we've got all the wheels prepped and ready to go. Now I like to start on the back side of the wheels. And no, you don't have to paint these or treat them, but I like to because this one was just really rusty before, and that's gonna continue unless we try to slow it or stop it. And this one's just got some decent surface rust. So instead of just using a primer or paint, I like to go through and use this rust reformer or rust converter. I've had really good luck with Rust-Oleum's brand. This is the paint-on version, and this is the aerosol kind. And it's worked great, but it does get a little bit expensive. So lately I switched over to the Harbor Freight brand and gave it a try. And this stuff is just as good, I think, and it cost about $3 a can less. So yeah, the Chad way. So if you don't know how these reformers work, they go on clear and then they'll dry black. Usually in 2 to 3 hours you can go through and top coat them, and within 24 hours they're dry. Then you can elect to go through and paint over the top of that. So when it comes to the back of these two wheels, we did take them down to bare metal. So there's no point in using a rust converter because there's no rust to convert. So we can just transition right over to a primer. And these are generally the two that I use. Now I will spend a couple extra bucks on a good primer versus, you know, what's cheap on the shelf. Now we can choose from a filler or a self-etching. If I take something down to bare metal, I like to use the self-etching primer. This is more if I just scuff some previous paint up and prime right over the top of it. But again, it's all a personal preference. So I've got 2 coats of self-etching primer on the back of these bare metal wheels. I've got 2 coats of the reformer on the back of these two. Now, the rust conversion magic's happened because the wheels are now black. It sprays on clear, and then once the conversion happens, it dries black. So we're gonna go through and use our 2 different primers. Again, we're gonna use the self-etching primer on this completely bare wheel, and then I'm gonna use the filler primer on the one that still has some paint. So we got them all primed up, and these things turned out great. I went ahead and primed the sides of all of them as well because I'm gonna be selling these, so we won't have any tires mounted on them, and I wanted them to look the best that they can for the next buyer. So now we've got every inch of these wheels covered in primer. So what's the next step? Well, if we're doing things the right way, I tell you to go out and pick up a couple rattle cans of black and spray the backside of these wheels, especially if you put any kind of rust converter on them. It is good to top coat them to give it a little bit more protection. Now, I'm also gonna go through and spray the sides of these wheels. Generally, the tires would be hiding these, but when we finish with this set, I'm gonna be selling them. So I want them to look really good for the next buyer. Now, if I was gonna be keeping these wheels for myself, I'd do it the Chad way, but I'd still put a couple coats of black on the back side of the rims. I just wouldn't be doing it to the sides of the wheel because no one would ever see that anyway. So let's get started. So we got a couple coats of black on, and these turned out really nice. So since I'm going to be selling these wheels when we're finished up, I've elected to go through and tape off all the slots and all the lug holes. That way I don't get overspray from the front onto the back of the wheels. So now we've got these wheels all prepped up and we're finally ready to start painting the faces. But before we can get started, you guys have to choose what color you want your wheels to be. Now a lot of us like that stock GM color, which is argent silver. Others like to go through and paint the faces of the wheel the same color as the truck. And other guys are just going to go through and use whatever paint you have on the shelf. Now if you are wanting to stay with that stock look of argent silver, you can buy it online through Eastwood, and it's called Chevy Rally Wheel Paint, or you can go through to any of the local auto parts stores that carry VHT wheel paint and you're looking for Chevy Argent Silver. Cheapest way I found it so far is at O'Reilly's or somewhere that carries Krylon Metallic, going through and looking for Dole Aluminum. It's number 1403. And this is a perfect match of the more high-end or more expensive cans of paint. So this is what I've been using with all my wheels. I've had great success. Now if you're going to go through and be painting a wheel that already has a tire mounted, no problem at all. You just need to go through and tape off the valve stem with some painter's tape or masking tape. You can actually tape the rim off, or you can go through and do an easy way that I like is getting 3x5 or 4x6 index cards. And I actually wedge these in between the tire and the wheel. It's going to take several of them, but I can reuse these over and over again. And they work a little better each time because they get harder as you put them in. So we'll go through and mount these in all the way around and get a couple coats of paint on. So now we've got the third coat of Argent on, and man, these turned out great. You gotta remember, we started with this guy. Now I doubt any of you guys can tell me which one of these I media blasted versus just using sandpaper. But if you can, it's that guy right there. Now is it worth it to media blast these? I don't think so, because the majority of this wheel is gonna be covered up by a beauty ring and a center cap, so you only have this much exposed. Now that leads us to the next question of, should you go through and top coat these with clear when you're done? And my answer is no. I have used this VHT clear in the past and it works pretty good, but these wheels tend to get dirty, chipped, and they scratch. So instead of having to go through and sand the clear coat back off just to make a touch up, all you have to do now is just pull the center caps, the beauty rings, spray them, put them back on, and down the road you go. So while we're waiting for the paint to dry, let's start cleaning up our beauty rings. Now, this one's pretty oxidized and scratched, but we're gonna be able to go through and shine it up and make it look newish again. Now, what I like to use for this is a little bit of Mother's Mag and aluminum polish and some Quad Zero grit steel wool. Now, I'll go through and just start with a little small amount, put it on my steel wool, and start rubbing it into the actual wheel itself. So what I do is I just go through and work it in a circular motion. I don't go up and down. I just follow the circle of the wheel. And I'm gonna get fairly aggressive with it. Now with this steel wool being Quad Zero, you're really not gonna be getting in there and scratching the stainless very much. But you wanna get any grime, any kind of old paint or surface rust that may be on here, and just really work it in. So I've got half of this one done, and yeah, huge difference so far. So we'll go through and keep scrubbing this one and finish the other three up, and then we'll move to the center caps. So when it comes to the center caps, the nose of these are chrome, the outside edge and face is this painted argent silver. Now I've already cleaned this up with some Mother's and steel wool. It's just pretty blah. What I like to do when I refinish the wheels is I like to go through and strip all of that paint off and make the entire center cap chrome. I think it just really pops. Now to do that, I grab a little carb cleaner, soak my steel wool, and just rub it, and that paint will come right off. Now, if your bow tie or your GMC stickers are bad, you can go online to Amazon, eBay, a couple other websites and get you new stickers for about $4 a pop. Now, it's all a preference. Do you want your new wheels to be popping with chrome, or do you want more of that original look there? Now, each one of these center caps is gonna have 3 bolts that hold it onto the actual wheel. Now, if you're gonna go the right way, you can go through and buy all new hardware, but if you're going the Chad way, I would just go through and get a wire brush, knock all the rust off, and come back with some spray paint and just give them a good blast. So now I've got these wheels all put back together, and I gotta tell you, I'm gonna pat myself on the back for these guys because they truly turned out awesome. Now, if you guys are looking for that cheap and easy way to update the looks of your old 67 to 87 Chevy or GMC pickup, going out to the junkyard and picking up a set of old truck rallies, cleaning them up and making them look like new again, you'll be surprised how you can completely transform the looks of your old ride. Now, truly, all I've got into these old wheels are a couple of cans of primer, paint, some sandpaper, a can of polish, and a lot of elbow grease. But you gotta remember, we started with this guy and ended up with this. Now, if you guys are getting value from this video, please smash the like button and subscribe. It doesn't cost you anything, you just gotta click. That truly helps me out and allows me to make more videos like this one. Now, if you guys aren't sure which rallies will fit on your old truck, make sure you check out my previous video on all the different types of GM truck rally wheels. So again, if you guys are looking for that cheap and easy way to transform the looks of your old ride, you could go from a pickup that used to look like that into one that looks like this. I appreciate your time. Thanks for watching.